Productions.
Hello, could I speak with Victoria Principal, please?
Who's calling?
Roy Jennings is my name. I'm calling from Dallas Fanzine.
Oh, yes, Roy, hi. This
Hi.
is Victoria.
Victoria, how are you?
I'm good. May I put you on hold for one moment?
Sure, yeah, no problem.
Hi there.
Hello, how are you?
Well, it's been back-to-back meetings, so I wanted to take a breath and get a cup of tea so I could sit down and enjoy our conversation.
Okay, it's lovely to speak with you, Victoria, and
Thank you.
we really appreciate you taking some time out to speak with us for our interview.
Certainly. Where are you from?
From Ireland. We're calling from Ireland.
Oh, I love your accent.
Do you like it, yeah?
Yes, I was just watching a movie last week
Uh-huh.
that takes place in Ireland, and it was so beautiful, I watched it twice.
Really?
Just to see the countryside.
Was it an old movie?
No, it's fairly new,
All right.
with Amy Adams, and with an Irish actor. Leap year.
Leap year. No.
So it's fairly new, but it's really shot in Ireland. It's quite beautiful. Let me ask you, my office is at the beach, and you can hear the Pacific. Is it drowning me out? Do you want me to close the windows?
No, I can't hear anything right now.
Okay, good.
So you sound good and clear. Okay, we'll begin. Just before, on the first question, it says here you were born in, I can't pronounce that name, in Japan.
Oh, Fukuoka, Japan. Yes, that would trip you up.
What is it again?
Fukuoka.
Fukuoka.
Fukuoka. Yes. As opposed to fuck you. So, yes, Fukuoka, Japan. My father was there after the war, and my mother was able to join him, and they were very excited to see each other, and they weren't careful. And they had not intended to have a child in Japan, but here I am.
Here you are. Now, is it true that you travelled the world from an early age due to the fact that your dad being in the United States Air Force?
Yes. Yes, all over the world.
Can you tell us about your experiences? I believe you lived in England for quite some time.
Well, let's see. Born in Japan, then moved to the United States when I was 3 months old, then moved to England when I was 5, then moved to Savannah when I was 9, moved to Puerto Rico when I was 10, moved to Warner Robins when I was 13, moved to Massachusetts when I was 15, moved to Florida when I was 17, and then I left home and moved to Europe.
Wow. You had a busy childhood travelling from here to there.
Yes.
Can you tell us about your acting profession? What made you decide to enter the acting profession?
There's no one memory. I do know that when I was a little girl, in, I guess what's called the first grade now, we were supposed to say what we wanted to be when we grew up. And I said that I wanted to be an actress. And in the second grade, I was asked once again what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I said I am an actress. So apparently, at a very young age, I had made that decision. And I did make my first commercial. I was in the first commercial at 5.
You've starred, of course, in the John Huston-directed movie The Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean, alongside Paul Newman, which earned you a Golden Globe nomination. What are your memories, Victoria, from this project?
Well, let me go down the cast with you for a moment. So, directed by John Huston, starring Paul Newman, Ava Gardner, Jessica Tandy, Jacqueline Bissett, Ned Beatty, Tony Perkins, Stacy Keach, and
Steve Canale, I believe, was in that as well, was he?
Steve Canale, and I'm forgetting someone. And imagine your first movie.
I can imagine.
I moved to Hollywood just 3 days prior to my 21st birthday, and 9 months later, I'm making this movie with all some of the greatest actors in film and on stage. So it was an extraordinary life experience. I would work, and then I would go to my room. I was afraid to leave my room for fear if there was anything they didn't like about my work and they saw me leaving the room, they would think that they would just fire me because I wasn't paying attention. So I lived between the set and my room. I was a nervous Nellie, but everyone was so kind to me. I was the baby on the set, and I was parented in the most thoughtful and wonderful way.
Excellent.
Oh, John Milius wrote it.
You also played Rosa in the 1974 disaster movie Earthquake, which also starred Charlton Heston and George Kennedy, who of course was also in Dallas.
And Ava Gardner once again.
Again, yeah. Is it true that during your auditions for that movie that you transformed your image by cutting off your long hair to win the role?
Well, yes. I went in for the part. My hair was normally long and straight, almost my waist, and met for the part. In fact, I was meeting for two parts at the same time, Towering Inferno and Earthquake. And for some reason, I took to the part of Rose. I wanted to do it. I thought it would be something very different from anything people had seen me do. And I knew that it was close, that there were a lot of actresses in Hollywood who wanted the part, and that we were running neck and neck. So when they called me back for the callback, the day before, I cut my hair off and permed it.
Yeah.
And I walked in with an afro.
It was a big afro, too. I remember watching this movie recently, yeah.
And so for a long time, people thought that was a wig, but it wasn't. Yeah. It was my hair. And then a year and something later, because the film was doing so well, they wanted to re-release it in Europe and have some added footage. I went back and shot more people, but then I did wear a wig. Yeah. They had to make a wig for that. I was not doing that to my hair twice.
You later decided to leave acting and pursue a career as a Hollywood agent. What drew you back into the acting profession?
Well, it wasn't premeditated. I really, when I left acting, I thought I was leaving acting for good because I was very disappointed in myself. I felt that I had not grown as a person, that my growth had been stunted by living in front of the camera, and that I was becoming one of those Hollywood victims, that I was trying to live up so badly to the impression that the press and that the public had of me that I wasn't growing into who I was meant to be. And so when I left to go and do something where I could focus on my intelligence, my brain. And so I was offered a job as an agent, and I got to represent writers, directors, producers, package, and also later on actors and actresses, and I thrived on it. And I enjoyed it so much that I took a leave of absence after a few years to apply to law school, and because I wanted to go on being in business. But I couldn't afford to go to law school full-time. I hadn't saved enough money, so I was looking for a part-time job. Aaron Spelling called me and wanted me for a pilot he was making. I said, Aaron, I don't act anymore. I explained the circumstances. He said, how much do you need for tuition for the first year? And that's what he offered me if I would do the pilot. But he said I was the only actress he'd ever known who had a clause in the contract that I would be in the pilot, but I'd be written out. I would never be in the show.
Let's talk a little bit about Dallas. Can you share some memories from your Dallas audition process?
Well, it was quite a process. I was the first person that they met with for the part of Pam because they had not started casting for Pam yet. But because I had been an agent, I talked the casting director into booking me to come in. She thought I was bringing a client. She didn't know that the client was me. Yeah. And so I met with them. And when I met with them, I was 27. I was 28 by the time I got the part. So it went on for months and months. And there were callbacks, and finally it came down to an audition in front of all the network executives and so forth. I did it with Patrick Duffy, and it went very well, and I got the part.
Can you remember anything about the first script run-through prior to filming the miniseries and meeting your co-stars for the very first time?
Larry Hagman and I had known each other over the years. Patrick, we had met at the audition, so it was nice to see Patrick. I had never met Linda Gray before, and it was just stunning. Her natural beauty and grace and spirit really was impactful. I never forgot that first impression of Linda. And Charlene was such a baby girl. She was so young, and for during the miniseries, I basically mothered her, or sistered her, which way you'd look at it, because it felt like she was a baby bird, and I wanted to protect her. And Steve, of course, I'd not seen Steve Canale since Judge Roy Bean, and it just all felt good. And Barbara Bel Geddes was a hoot. Yeah. From the first moment, Barbara and I recognized that we had a very similar sense of humor, And Jim Davis was very much a father figure to me.
Do you remember the first Dallas scene that you filmed for the miniseries? I think it was on location in the cold winter.
In the Mercedes with the top down, and Patrick and I stop at a gas station, and he kisses me, and we had to do it several times because our lips kept sticking together. We were frozen. But he and I never forgot that. Never forgot that first day, that first scene.
What are your memories, Victoria, of Leonard Katzman?
Well, I loved Lenny. Lenny was our producer, our director, our father, our uncle, our guidance counselor. He was everything. And years later, I had a production deal at ABC, and I hired Lenny, in fact, to come in to co-produce with me. Our relationship did not end after I left Dallas.
Sadly, producers Phil Capice and Arthur Lewis passed on recently. Can you share some memories of them?
Well, Phil was someone who presented a very conservative presence, and someone who did not seem to be very emotional. Yet underneath that was a sweet, wonderful teddy bear with a great heart and tremendous generosity. And I think a lot of people didn't get to plug into that. And I was lucky enough to be invited into his inner circle and to know that side of him. And Arthur had a wonderful sense of humor and told the most wonderful, unexpected, bawdy stories.
Many fans today often comment on how much they enjoy Pam during her first year in Dallas, when she was somewhat of a more fiery character.
Before they cleaned her up.
Yeah. Do you think the writers developed her enough after that initial year on the show?
I think something happened that I can understand as a businesswoman, from a business standpoint. No one expected JR to take off like he did. Originally, the concept, it was going to be Romeo and Juliet, right? And the two opposing families. And Larry's performance was just staggering. And it ate up the film. It owned the camera. And so suddenly they had this character who was really evil, but incredibly mesmerizing. And so they needed some goodness to balance that. And they chose Pam to be the moral compass. So that, and if you have that much evil, you've got to have a balance, or it's not as interesting.
What are your memories, Victoria, of Larry Hagman?
The ones you can print? Gosh, I've known Larry since my 20s. Since I moved to California, because I spent so much time in Malibu and lived in Malibu off and on for years, and he lived in Malibu. I have so many memories of Larry. I will tell you this. He is so smart. He is so smart, and he's often so ahead of the curve that he will say something in a very offhand and casual manner, and you'll think, well, that's a little crazy, and then 10 years later you'll think, oh my God, Larry knew that 10 years ago. Wow. He's very perceptive. He's very bright. He's a very honest man. He has a wonderful, loving heart, and he's eccentric and interesting in the most wonderful way.
Of course, Larry Hagman and Patrick Duffy were known as pranksters on the Dallas set. Do you remember any of the pranks they played on your time on the show?
Oh, yes. They were endless. I think my favorite was Patrick filling Larry's brand new dressing room with goats that shit all over it. That was my favorite. And so the smell of goat shit was so strong, I think Larry had to move. Can you print that? I'm not sure.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Why not? You mentioned earlier on that you had a blast with Barbara Bel Geddes. I believe I read once that you and she had chili pig outs.
Well, we both loved chili. To a fault, I might add. And the other thing is, Barbara, every birthday, Barbara would request that I would take a song, a classic, and pervert it into an obscene version, and then I would sing it for her at the top of my lungs on her birthday. And I have many wonderful memories of taking beautiful classic songs and completely destroying them.
Is there recordings of these anywhere, I wonder?
Unfortunately for me, there is one.
There is, yeah?
And I think it made it on the internet for a while, but thank God it's off now.
Oh, wow. Now, Victoria, you shared some interesting scenes with Linda Gray, and of course, Sue Ellen and Pam's relationship was extremely well developed between hatred in the beginning to genuine friendship later on. Did you get to know Linda well?
Yes, I have tremendous admiration for Linda. She has a wonderful spirit, and it's been consistent from the day I met her. She's curious. She loves to learn. She's fearless. She travels. She seeks. She's a seeker. And I really like that about her. And she's a wonderful actress. There were times when I would wrap and I could have gone home and I would stay to watch her work because it was such a pleasure.
Dallas had numerous guest actors over the years, but was there anybody who came on the show and made you go, wow, how lucky are we to get them on our program?
Priscilla Pointer.
Yeah, she played
my mother.
Your mother, yeah.
And gosh, there's a long list of some just brilliant character actors who would come on and in 3 takes just knock it off the map. I feel badly right now because I'm not pulling up everybody's names, but it happened every year.
Here's a loaded question for you. With the exception of Patrick, who do you think you had the best on-screen chemistry with on Dallas?
Ken Kercheval. We found some sort of rhythm from the day we started working together. We bore absolutely no physical resemblance. I mean, who would believe we were sister and brother?
Yeah.
Yet the way we moved together and spoke, you really believed we were sister and brother.
Indeed.
It was magical, and it was from day one.
Was there ever a storyline on Dallas that just didn't feel right for you and the Pam character?
Yes. There was a storyline where a character was gay, and I was asked to use another word for gay, and I refused, and they had to shut down production.
Wow.
Because I found the word offensive. And after hundreds of thousands of dollars and hours of non-production, we used the word gay.
I thought you would have said it was the Emerald Mine storyline with Matt Cantrell during the Dream season.
You know, in some ways it was all a dream. That year really flew by. I was not a happy camper. I had already told Laura Marr that I was leaving in 2 years because as of the 7th year, there was no doubt that that everything was in decline for me. And so I think my attention was somewhat divided. And so it didn't pain me in the same way it would have a few years before because I knew I was leaving. Now,
going back, Victoria, to when you became a Hollywood agent, did the experience help you when negotiating your own Dallas contracts?
I was my own manager, and so it was very, very helpful.
I believe you had one clause in your contract where you would only be seen in a bathing suit a certain number of times per season.
Yes, I felt that after the first couple of years that the scripts on Dallas seemed to feature me in the water a lot. And I was flattered that the producers enjoyed my figure, but I felt that I had more to offer than just swimming every episode.
Yeah.
And so I negotiated it. In fact, it was a deal breaker that there would only be 3 swimming suits a season.
Now, you delivered some of your most dramatic work in the 1985 Dallas episode Swan Song. Of course, Bobby being hit by a car driven by your sister on the show, Catherine Wentworth. What are your memories of filming that episode?
I remember being surprised when I saw it because I remember clearly the day we were doing it, there wasn't a lot of direction on the page. And the director had the wisdom and insight to say, just play it, just do whatever you feel, because it wasn't on the page. And I remember seeing it and being touched. So I was touched while doing it, but I remember seeing it, and I think it's difficult to see your own work and be touched. I was really touched by what happened between Pam and Bobby. in that scene. And I thought Patrick was wonderful.
Can you remember the day when you discovered that the 1985-86 series would be written off as a dream?
Yes.
What was your reaction at the time?
I was glad that someone had thought of a way to get us out of the last year and back on track.
Do you think it damaged the show?
No, I think at first there was some reticence, and then I think it was really embraced to the point where people who watch Dallas to this day, the two things they remember most are Who Shot JR and Pam's Dream.
I'm sure it was devastating for John Beck as well, because he was out of a job, wasn't he?
And such a lovely man.
Yeah.
And such a lovely actor. I believe he went on to enjoy work, and I don't think he was devastated. I think that he has a wonderful family, and he lived rather far away, and I think that it allowed him to return to some normalcy. I think that the shock of being on Dallas and that kind of scrutiny was not something that he endured well.
At the height of Dallas's success, your face adorned every newspaper and magazine in the US and all over the world, in fact, with your career, relationships and marriages all under the microscope of the press.
Forgive me, 2 marriages.
2 marriages. 2
in a lifetime. I don't think that doesn't deserve plural.
Okay, fair enough. I stand corrected, Victoria.
No, I'm teasing. It was 2 marriages all total.
Yeah.
Okay.
How do you cope with the press intrusion into your private life?
I wish I could tell you that I had figured that out. I wish I could tell you that I had risen above it and it doesn't bother me. I wish I could tell you all those things, and I can't. I live a very quiet life now. I built a home on the coast, and I have another home in Northern California, and I move rather quietly through the world, and I really like it that way. And I have a much different life. It's not scrutiny, and as you probably know, I stopped acting 10 years ago, and I really enjoy what I'm doing, and I enjoy doing it quietly.
It was announced in January of 1987 that you would be leaving Dallas along with Susan Howard, who was being axed from the show. What was Leonard Katzman's reaction when you told him that you would be leaving?
Oh, wow. Lenny was very, very upset with me. Although I had told the people at Lorimar that I was leaving, and I had told them 2 years before, I had not told Lenny. I just assumed they would tell him.
Yeah.
And Lenny was distraught and really tried to talk me into staying. And I think had a lot to do with the offer they then made me, because I was made an extraordinary financial offer to stay, which would have made me the highest paid woman on television. But I was spiritually I had already left. I had known for 2 years, and I had already created my production company. I was already buying scripts. I already had my future lined up. And it was something I very much wanted to go and do.
Of course, your exit on Dallas was in a big ball of flames, crashing Bobby's car into a truck. Did you like that exit for your character, Victoria?
Actually, I think I had a series of responses. At first, I liked it because I thought that it was being honest to the audience, which was, Pam's not coming back from that. She's not a toasted marshmallow. Yeah. That's it. That's the end of Pam, so that no one would be misled. I was upset when I was told half a year later that someone in bandages was on the show and that the audience was being misled that Pam might come back. And in fact, they did continue to pursue me for a couple of years. I think once the movies I was producing started coming out, and my movies did very well, and I think that's when they realized I really was never coming back.
Your very final scene on the show, was it emotional for you? Do you have any memories of that?
The only reason it was emotional was saying goodbye to everyone. As I said, if you know you're going to do something for 2 years, that's a lot of emotional preparation. And I had already quietly said my goodbyes, walked around the sets and, looked and taken pictures in my head. It was saying goodbye to the crew. The last night. That was emotional. But I'd been moving on for 2 years.
Joshua Harris, who played Little Christopher, told us recently that he remembers you giving the cast and crew sweatshirts on your final day on the set.
Yes. You want to know what they said?
Please tell us.
It was all a dream. And love Victoria. So
very nice.
Thank you.
Did you keep any props or memorabilia when you left the show?
I kept the nightgown and robe that I wore for the shower scene.
The shower scene, of course. Yeah.
And I kept every single engagement ring that Bobby gave Pam.
You just mentioned there earlier on about the Pam character being in bandages. The writers did recast the role of Pam for one episode in 1988, I think it was, and the new Pam was played by a so-called lookalike. Her name was Margaret Michaels. Did you ever see her in that role, and did you ever watch the show after you had left?
I never watched again after I left.
Were you ever asked to return to Dallas after 1987?
Yes. I think it's important for me to say this. I loved being on Dallas. It not only changed the course of my whole life, I really loved it. When I left, I didn't leave because I left for three reasons. One, the quality of the scripts was definitely in decline. And I didn't want to stay on the show until it whimpered to death. I wanted to leave with my head up while the show was still the show that I adored and loved. And it was in decline. Secondly, I was still a young woman. Dallas was a job. If I had stayed on till the very end, it would have ended up being my career. And there were things I dreamed of doing. And I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in regret, not knowing if I might have done them if not. I would rather have left, tried and failed, than wondered the rest of my life if I had had the courage, what would have happened. So for those people who think that I left Dallas because I didn't care about it, I cared deeply about it.
Of course, Dallas is out now on DVD. The entire series has just been released. Do you own any of the Warner Dallas DVD box sets?
Yes.
And if you had to choose an episode, Victoria, that you'd like to do a commentary on, which episode would it be?
Oh, it would be the first 5.
The miniseries. Now, recently there's been a huge media buzz regarding the return of Dallas on the TNT network. If a good script is delivered to you, would you be interested in reprising your role of Pamela?
She's dead. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I love doing the show. As you probably know, I didn't do any of the movies or reunions except one, and that was the 25-year reunion. And I loved doing it because it allowed me to see the whole cast for the first time in 18 years and to interact in a way that was really natural, that was not phony or spooky or pathetic. And sometimes it's really good to put a punctuation mark on something. What do you think?
I think we'd all like to see Pam back.
Oh, you're so sweet. But what would you do with me? Does Pam, I mean, was she frozen? You know,
I think she just vanished.
Cryogenics, and now she shows up.
Well, I mean, if they can bring Bobby back in the shower, I'm sure they can figure out something for Pam, you know. But it would be great to have you back on the show.
I just would never want to do anything that injured the respect I had for the show.
Yeah.
And the fact that Pam did leave with dignity. So that's a tough one.
Something you may have to think about there.
Well, based upon what you're saying now, you've got me hemming and hawing. I know all about the show. Of course, there have been phone calls and so forth, and I really have felt that there is no way to do that.
Well, we'll have to wait and see, Victoria. Fingers crossed. You never know.
We'll wait and see.
We'll wait and see.
Well, we know I still have the robe, the nightgown, and the ring.
Well, yeah, you could reprise that. You could come back in the shower this time.
So that's funny.
Now, were you invited to the celebrations at South Fork for the 30th Dallas anniversary back in 2008?
Yes, I was, and I investigated, and I felt the way it was being organized was disorganized, and I didn't want to be part of something that had the possibility of going wrong, and it did.
Big time.
Yes. So, once again, it's not that I don't love Dallas. I haven't participated in many of these things because I don't feel that they honor the show in the way that I feel about it. And I'm sure I'm going to hear back about that. But there it is.
Just to move away from movie and TV series, let's talk about your award-winning skincare line, Principal Secret. What was the catalyst for creating your own skincare line?
When I was in my 20s, I went from having very healthy, clear skin to developing acne, and it was a certain kind of acne. And I went from dermatologist to dermatologist, and the only thing that would bring it under control were antibiotics, but then I would get stomach aches, and then I would stop taking it, and then it would come back. And finally I found someone who was able to tell me why I was getting the acne, that I was allergic to many of the ingredients in skincare and makeup. And back then, they used to ladle the makeup on actresses, and everybody used the same thing. They just, take a pan stick, and it didn't matter. They'd use the same thing on 20 people, so you were getting everybody's germs. And so learning that, I went and had 3 products made just for me that did not contain any of the things that I was allergic to. And then I began bringing my own makeup. And that was in my 20s. And in my 30s, because so many other actresses expressed interest in my skincare and my makeup and the fact that my skin was so healthy, I thought, this is something that a lot of women would like. And so I began the company in the 80s, and I did it very quietly, and then it became successful in 1991.
And of course, Principal Secret is a huge seller in the USA on QVC and through your infomercials. Can European customers purchase your product?
Oh, Principal Secret's in 40 countries now.
Wow.
Including Europe, yes. So it is the most successful and longest-running celebrity-driven skincare line in the history of direct sales. But I need to add something. Mm-hmm. I'm not someone who said, I'm well-known, and now I'll abuse that by saying I know how to make skincare. I actually am a member of the Society of Cosmetic Chemists. I really am hands-on. I really go in and formulate. I really earned this. You can't buy your way in. You can't. There's no way to get in unless you earn it. You have to know your chemistry. So this is something that I love, that I really do, and I do it because I've been doing it for years. I've always loved to do it. I didn't know that it would become a worldwide business. I sensed that it would be successful because so many of my girlfriends wanted it. Now, I have to ask you something. Since you sound that like you honestly would like to see me come back in the new show.
Yeah.
How would you bring me back? Would I be a grandmother? Would I have been frozen, and that's how they brought me? How would you bring me back?
I definitely wouldn't do the frozen thing, because that would be just kind of way off the scale.
Cryptogenics?
No. How would we like to see Pam back on the show? That's a 6 marker. You've got me there, Victoria. We might leave that one open for the fans maybe to decide and have a vote.
Yes, I'd like to see what the fans say. Okay. Because how would one bring Pam back so that it would honor who she was on the show and the way she left, so that it didn't demean that history.
Well, there you go. To all the fans who are listening, it's up to them now to come up with a good idea to get Pam back on Dallas. It might work. You never know. Before I let you go, Victoria, can I ask you, have you checked out our website, dallasfanzine.com?
No, but I will now.
We've lots of history on the show there, and some wonderful photographs as well and stuff. So maybe if you get some time, you might want to check it out.
Well, I'm absolutely going to. And you have been a delight. Thank you. And thank you for asking interesting and thoughtful questions.
Well, thank you very much, Victoria. Myself and Gary have spent a bit of time researching all the questions, so it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, and I really appreciate your time. To you, just before I let you go for the last time, Victoria, would you be willing to be a sport and voice something funny for me? Voice
something funny?
Yeah, to voice something funny. Would you be willing to say this for me? I just thought of this at the last minute there. This is Pam Ewing from Dallas. Last night I dreamt I opened the shower door and found Roy Jennings standing there. What a nightmare. Would you mind saying that?
Hi, this is Pam Ewing from Dallas. Last night I dreamed that I opened the shower door and I found Roy Jennings standing there. And you know what? It's really, really big.
I was not expecting that. Oh, that is so funny.
I dare you play that.
I'm going to play that.
You're laughing and blushing. You're adorable.
I'm extremely blushing. I'm sweating here as well.
Would you like me to do something else so that you can run this by your wife?
No, you're okay. She'll be thrilled with that. She'll like that. Of course, she will not agree with you.
Well, no one else will ever know.
It's been a blast speaking to you.
Thank you. Mutual.